Welcome to the show, Dr. Kara Pepper. I'm so excited to have you. I see you online and I follow you, and I have for several years. And so I'm really honored to have you as a guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to finally meet you via podcast.
Can you give us a little intro to how you went from, being a primary care physician, doing your own practice, to doing so much more and really evolving in your practice where now you coach others and how to have their own practices and such?
Yes, absolutely. It all came from making epic mistakes that led to burnout. And I'm someone who loves to learn the hard way. I have this idea that I can do things the right way, but life is trial and error. So I was a ballet dancer before I was a physician, brought all my perfectionism and imposter syndrome with me, and I overworked as a sign of self worth. And that led to pretty epic burnout in my career. And I kept thinking if I could just fix myself, fix my schedule, fix my hours, fix my niche, fix my patient stuff, I could be happy in medicine. And finally, after taking a sabbatical and living through COVID, I recognized I was just out of alignment with how I was practicing. And so, really for me, the past 5 years has been about finding a way to feel like I'm going to live my life without regrets. And that meant making a lot of big mistakes and taking brave moves that finally led me to where I am now.
I love this because I am this season, we're really talking about how to take risks and what risk looks like for different people and what a
Sure.
brave leap is, because so often what you want, where you're being pulled or where your heart is being drawn
Mm.
to or where your mind is really being stimulated is something outside of what everyone else around you is doing. And it often comes at a cost because we follow down this path in medicine that is very well plowed. Like, first you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and this is what it is. And it's successful. And we also are very profitable in medicine. If you look at the US workforce, we make good money, so to speak,
Sure.
for the years of education and everything that we pour in. So taking a brave leap and pivoting is scary. It's terrifying. And I am curious, like, how did you can you kind of step through in your mind what those brave moves look like your very first thing you did? Like, I'm sure it wasn't like you woke up one day and you're like, I'm going to stop seeing patients and I'm going to start doing this. Like, I'm sure it was small, brave moves that were very well thought out and yet took courage. So can you kind of step us through those first few moves?
Sure. Yeah. They did not feel brave whatsoever, and they were definitely not well thought out. So I just want to say that I did it very messily, and that's the way I do things. I think it's the way many of us do in ways that we don't recognize. But I'm married to someone who's not in healthcare, and he also works a lot. And we would look at each other with two young children and be like, I guess this is just adulting. I guess everyone's just tired all the time. This is just what it is. We make good money, like you said. What are we complaining about? So we were stuck trying to fix things. Like if I could just do enough personal development and yoga, I could somehow be happy in a career I was working 80 hours a week, that type of thing. So part of it was getting unstuck, or at least recognizing that something else might be possible, even if I didn't even think that was for me. So I got outside of my echo chamber. I listened to this podcast called High Above This. It's on NPR, and it's the Mark Cubans of the world who are tinkering in their garage and then end up building something. And I was like, oh, it's not actually that hard. You just have an idea and you just keep stepping forward, just like we do in med school. Okay. And then I started talking to other doctors who were doing things differently. Even if I had no desire to like go build a startup, I was like, oh, it doesn't have to be either academics or private practice. We have all of these other choices. And I hired a coach in the midst of all that, thinking that if I could just fix myself, I could be okay in my corporate job. And it opened up possibility to me that, like, oh, this is not just that, not that I want to be a coach, but like, oh, I have ideas that are not just this binary. So I think to answer your question, the very initial phases were just recognizing that something else is possible, even though I had no desire to change my life. I still thought I needed to follow the rules about what I had created. Um, because frankly, the misery that I knew was a lot more comfortable than the uncertainty of doing something new. So I was stuck. And and then I started, you know, taking those next steps, which I'll just say anecdotally as a primary care physician, and your listeners know this if they are helping anyone with behavioral change. When we have this like big thing, like my patients are like, I want to be healthy. It's like so nebulous. It doesn't really mean anything. So a lot of the thought process I had was like, I just want to be in balance. I want to have more time, but I didn't concretely know what that meant to me. And so for our patients, we break that down into smaller and smaller pieces. Like, okay, you want to be healthy. What does that mean? Okay, I think I should lose weight. Okay, why? Because I want to have, more energy. Okay, well, why? Okay, well, I want to be able to get on the carpet with my kids and like play with them and get up without pain. Okay, now we're cooking because that's like pain control, that's mobility, that's energy. Those are specific things we can work on. So with my career, I was just like, I just want to not feel like crap at the end of every day, but I didn't really know how to do that. And so part of it was like, I just need space where no one's asking me questions. And so the brave step was to block time for, 2 hours on a Thursday where I just committed to myself, this is my time where I can do nothing for anyone else. No one's going to ask anything of me. I'm going to turn off my EMR or whatever. And it was testing the waters to say, if I can do this one little thing, what else can I do? And the world didn't change, but my world started to change in these very tiny ways where I could build on that momentum. And so bravery is kind of retrospective. It's like confidence. You don't have to be brave to do something. You do the thing and then you feel brave. So it's a long way of answering your question. It's by taking these tiny little concrete steps moving forward that before you know it, you might actually be someplace that you want to be. So
I
there's a lot
love
more.
that you started this journey really by giving yourself dedicated time for solitude. It's a habit that I coach on, and it's a habit that I have written on and I podcast on, and the women that I coach in my coaching courses are sick of hearing me say it because, but I tell them because my journey started the very same way. When I burned out in 2013 and rebuilt myself over the next year, I started by giving myself 30 minutes in the morning at 4:30 a.m. And it was the only time I had in the day where I wasn't putting one of my four kids to bed or driving them somewhere or taking care of a patient. It was like 4:30 to 5 a.m. So I thought, this is what I'm going to start gifting myself, this beautiful 30 minutes. And the clarity that came in that space is something that I still commit to, because nothing changes but me when I give myself solitude. Things become very, very clear. Um, and I start living in portrait mode where things close to me become real clear. Things in the distance become blurry, but that's okay, because right here and right now, I realize like, oh, I feel miserable today because I haven't slept in 5 days, or I'm stressing about this interaction that I have and I need to process that and let it go. Or I'm worried, I'm having anxiety about one of my kids and I need to actually reach out and check in. Or I am having decision fatigue, but I know what the answer is. I'm just avoiding it. Those are the questions that pop up in my solitude. And yet, you and I both coach physicians. I think convincing someone that what they actually need to do is get alone with their thoughts and have some solitude routinely built in is so challenging. They just want to fix, right? They just
Yeah,
want to like, tell me what to do. Tell me what I should do with this. And you're like, actually, I can't tell you what to do. You need
that's
to get
right.
alone in your thoughts.
That's right. Yeah, my best friend infamously would bring me to these wellness retreats when I was burning out, and I would literally sit in the corner with my arms folded and be like, "This is crap." Like, and it was because it felt intolerable to be alone with my thoughts when, frankly, I was pretty anxious. And so, for folks who cannot hold still, because that just feels awful, because we're in survival mode, frankly, like sympathetic mode, you know how, like, when you walk the dog or you're like standing in the shower and you have these amazing ideas that just bubble up to the surface? It's the same thing. You've just kind of distracted yourself with movement so you don't feel so anxious. So, whatever those things are, you don't necessarily have to be quiet in meditation on the couch, but if that's your jam, awesome. But for some of us, we need kind of a bridge, perhaps doing something of moving meditation or doing routine tasks like folding laundry. It's so mundane, but it allows our brain to get into that parasympathetic space. It's settling your nervous system. That's where your intuition, your problem solving, and all your answers lie. So however you can get yourself there, that is where you will find your answers.
So when you decided to make these big changes in your career, and I'd love for you to kind of explain how what your career looks like, how it looks different, and how you transitioned. What were some questions or prompting questions or kind of leading questions that you asked yourself or you really marinated on during those times of solitude, of reflection that allowed you to make those big changes, which on this big scale, I mean, if you zoom out, they're big changes, but I'm
Yeah.
sure that they, at the time, they were small, concrete changes that you needed to make. Can you kind of step us through that?
Yeah. So I would say that the first I was working for a hospital and practice for 14 years. Those first 7 years led up to my burnout. I took a sabbatical. The next 7 years were effectively the lead up to COVID and COVID. And I knew I wanted to do things differently. Like I mentioned, I'd try to change my schedule, tried to do all those things. But when COVID happened, it became very clear to me that I could be dead in a week. And that recognition of my mortality was brand new to me. You know, I was in my mid 40s and it had never occurred to me that I too might actually die one day. And so that perspective of being fast forwarded to my deathbed and saying, if I looked back on this season in my life right now, what would I regret doing or not doing? And I knew in my bones, with aging parents, with kids who are about to graduate from high school, with a career that was sucking up all the air in the room, I would have regretted eternally not creating space for what I said that I valued, but was never ever on my schedule. And COVID gave us kind of a glimpse for a lot of us whose schedules got totally discombobulated to actually try some of those things, right? For some people, they baked sourdough bread. For other people, they reconnected in their marriage. For other people, they got out of relationships. But it became kind of a test kitchen for me. And the practical part of that was that we shifted entirely to telemedicine, and I had built the telemedicine line for our practice. And so 100% of my time I was doing telemedicine alone in my basement with my dog without anyone bothering me. And I felt the best I had ever felt in medicine because I could focus on the patient. I didn't feel rushed. And I had time and white space in my day that I'd never had before. I was like, this is something, this is information. So leaning into that, what feels so good and what is working was really awesome. And then I said, well, how do I create more of that? And kind of infamously, I went to my boss about, well, this is in the summer of 21 after a year of COVID. And I went for advice, I think, to just be like, hey, what can I do to fix things so I can feel okay in this job? And halfway through the conversation, he was like, are you quitting? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm quitting my job. So when I say I did it messily, I did it. I didn't, I had never said those words out loud. Yes, I'm going to quit my job until that conversation. And I went home to my husband and told him, and interestingly, I was telling someone the story recently, and I asked my husband literally just days ago, hey, remember when I quit my job without telling you? And he was like, oh my God, Kara, you told me 30 times you were going to quit your job. Everyone knew you were unhappy. You were the one who was hanging on. You were the one who kept thinking you could just fix it. Everyone knew you needed to change. And
Wow.
so I think that was the second piece is for whoever has earned your trust, who you can say the hard things with, ask them or tell them. And they know, like everyone around you knows. If it's a drinking problem, they know about it. If you're burned out and unhappy, they know about it. If it's a relationship issue, they know. So, like, say, like, what have you noticed about me? Or is there anything you're worried about with me? Or is there anything that you think I should know? They'll tell you. And just getting the words out of your own brain is really part of the process of admitting what you really need to yourself.
I think it's so interesting that, oftentimes we think we're hiding our our struggle. We think we're hiding it. We think we're putting on a good face because we are. We're trying so hard to show up for people, especially the people we love, the people around us.
Yeah.
And yet, like you said, it's so obvious to people that are really close to us what we're struggling with, which is one of the reasons, like, I've never been somebody that I just don't ever argue with people on social media, and I never point out people's wrongs to them on social media
Yeah.
because I always think, like, that person knows what's going on. Like,
Yeah.
they don't need me telling them on social media what they're doing is wrong. Like, I'm 90% sure that they know that they are in the wrong, or they're projecting, or they're acting out. And certainly the people closest to them know. And it's not me on social media who's going to like course
Win that
correct
war.
somebody by
Yeah.
a comment. I've
No.
never really understood that mentality, that kind of group think mentality where we gang up on people on social media. I'm like, I'm 90% sure that person knows what they just did or said or posted is wrong. Like, we don't all need to tell them.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, and, but it's funny because I think, especially for women, when we are the majority of us, and I know I'm talking in very binary terms here, but most of the time we as women are communal, and we are kind of the communal caretakers of our environments and our microcosms, whether that's at home or in the clinic or in the hospital. We're the ones that are kind of like, are you okay? And how's Jimmy's, broken arm? And like, we're the caregivers of a lot of people's emotions. And we don't recognize that, number one, that's kind of an societal expectation that falls on women. And so we think that we're showing up like, oh, we're just going to fake it today, even though we're so struggling. And we don't give ourselves that space and that time. And I love the journey that you just described, because it started out by just giving yourself boundaries on a Thursday for 2 hours, because you knew that it wasn't like you had to show up for yourself in a way you hadn't before, because you did face your mortality and you were asking yourself these hard questions. I'm curious for the woman, because I know we're going to get this. There's somebody listening who's saying, well, that's great. You took a sabbatical, you quit your job, but I'm the breadwinner. I am the sole breadwinner. I have most of the
That's right.
women that listen are actually that. I'm that. So I understand this.
Yeah.
What do you say to that woman who is miserable in a job, or maybe just knows she needs to quit, but she's not married, and maybe she doesn't have two incomes? She is the breadwinner, but she knows she has to get out of the situation. What would you say to her?
Yeah, the first has to do with safety, truly. Like if you're in a situation that is untenable and is not safe, that's a very different set of problems to solve. Sometimes you just have to take the loss and say, I am going to get out because I value myself, my children, et cetera, enough to take that risk. Because with any behavior change, the acute actionable thing has to outweigh the fear. And so in that moment, it may be like, I just have to get out. But let's say that someone's just in the grind and they want things to change, but there's not an acute reason. The next step is just to create some space. You don't have to quit your job, but that space may be, I just want to start a nest egg. Nothing else is going to change, but I'm just going to start a financial plan so that if 3 years from now I want to do something different or cut back on my FTEs, I'll have a little financial cushion, because financial fear, financial wellness is really a part of these decisions. The next part may be, how can you get out of your echo chamber? It may be space away from that echo chamber that you're in with everyone in your touchdown and everyone's grumbling about the same things. How can you listen to someone outside of your circles, outside of healthcare, who is doing things well? I love to lean into resentment. Who's that person that you're just like a little annoyed by because they always get what they want, or they have the life that you want and you're a little envious? What is it about them? Because that's the space that you're trying to create in your own life. So it may be time, it may be financial, it may be influence, but allowing yourself just to try something new. You do not have to blow up your entire life, but you need to look at something with a new perspective, with new freedom, with new possibility, in order to just try it on, even if it's just in your mind. And in that possibility, it may just help you take that next tiny step to say, well, I'm going to go to this conference because I'm not going to quit my job, but I'm going to go listen to Sasha talk at her conference because that's something that I've never experienced before. I mean, I remember my first wellness conference thinking like, oh, that's such a luxury to go to this like bougie wellness conference. And when not hyperbolically, it changed the trajectory of my life to go to this conference. So I, I think you just have to try to create some space and
Yes.
then take whatever is the next step, lean into that.
And I want to take a moment and really speak to the women listening today. And because I think this way all the time. And I've never thought of it as the resentment thing. So I love that you've just given me a different way to look at it. But I learned really harshly a lesson in my academic career early where I was asking for things and being told no. And I just was like, okay, okay. And someone that I was younger than me, a junior person, I was out for about 5 or 6 years, asked for something that I had been asking for every single year. And he got it. And I went to him and said, how did you get this? And he was like, well, I just asked. And then I just asked again. And I just said, I'm not going to do this without this. And I realized, like, oh, like the world isn't fair. And um, I'm asking if this person says no, then I have to go to this person. Like instead of going to the same person, I have to go above them because, or I have to just set a boundary and say, okay, then you're not getting this from me, right? Like I got to play a different game here. The rules that he's playing, that's not the board game I'm playing.
That's right.
It was such a hard lesson because I really believed in meritocracy and I believed
Yeah.
that like I was going to get what I earned and I had never experienced that level of sexism before that was just so blatant, like just so obvious to me. So I have had to learn that, like that the rules are different for me as a woman and I cannot take every no as a no.
That's right.
I hear it from that person and then I go to a different person.
That's right.
It is exhausting to do that, but I think so many women that I coach, I hear this all the time. They're like, "I asked, I went, I asked, I did what we practiced, I went through all the stuff and they said no." And they think that that means no. They're like, "I'm done." And I'm like,
That's
"No, no,
right.
no, no. No, no, no. We just have to figure out now who we ask or how we have to you have to cut back your what you're giving to receive, right? Like
That's
you
right.
got to you got to take the gloves off."
That's right.
So these are that I want to say that just for women listening because there may be a woman listening who's like, "Oh my gosh, Kara, Sasha, I went, I asked, I did these things, I made a decision, I tried to make a brave move and I was told no." And it's like one of those things that it makes me angry that we as women have to ask again and again and again or go around or a different way or take the gloves off, but we do. We have to. And so just because someone says no to you does not mean that the answer is no.
That's right. That's right. And it, for me, as a root cause person, as an internist, I'm trying to diagnose and figure out what the root cause is. It's helpful for me to understand that we are conditioned, and you and I are white women with tons of privilege, but at every level of people who are marginalized, they are conditioned to feel excluded and to assimilate and keep the peace by saying yes and taking no for an answer. And so it can feel really, really uncomfortable because it requires self worth, it requires determination, it requires a sense that you are worthy, deserving of having that. And so for me, recognizing, like, of course, I was just handed these values from when I was a kid, and that I just have to, I have to behave like my husband can behave. Like he's a man who can just go ask for what he wants. And so seeing the resentment that I would feel
Yeah,
towards people who could just get whatever they wanted was a very helpful compass because I could say, oh, they just asked like your colleague did, or oh, they just asked the right person, or oh, they were allied with the right powerful person. And so, okay, great. Is that the game that we're going to play? I wish it were different.
me
But
too.
once you kind of unhack figure out what the unspoken rules of the game are, it's really, really helpful. I don't know that I've ever said this out loud on a podcast, but my old practice, which I'm grateful I joined, but it was not the right place for me after 15 years. I knew that the people who called the shots were all men over the age of 50. And I knew if I could get my ideas into their head, my ideas would move forward. And so that's the game that I learned to play is that I could just leverage my
Right.
ideas. I
Yeah.
wish they would just take my word for it.
Yeah.
They didn't, but I could get things done in that way. So anyway, that's a long way of saying I agree.
Yes, it's very true. And I think that, you know, I hate that we have to do that. But I mean, Kara, I even have women that I coach that'll say, I went to quit and I was told I couldn't quit. And I'm like, what? Like, and they believe, they're like, I couldn't quit.
Okay, I'll
It
just
didn't
stay.
work. And I'm like, what do you mean it didn't work? Well, they told me no, I can't quit. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like this is the level of what we, and it sounds
Yes,
silly, but it's really very true. I mean, I
yes,
think we've
that's
all been
right.
in that place. So I just wanted to say that. And I love this discussion. It was such a good discussion on, you know, taking risks and doing the brave, hard thing. And I would love, like, what, looking back at you yourself in those early stages, is there something, is there one piece of advice you wish you heard, or maybe a piece of advice you did hear, or maybe something stirring inside of you that you still say to yourself? I know I have a couple of those pearls that you would be willing to share with the rest of us, because you know there's someone listening today that's going to listen to this and say, "Oh my gosh, I if those two can do it, I can do it."
Yeah, several things. One is, what would the version of you, some people will say, what is the 8-year-old version and the 80-year-old version of you really want for you today? What would she be so proud of? Or who is the version of you on your deathbed? What would she be so proud of? So, what does she tell you to do? Because it feels hard right now, but through the lens of the next several decades, it's actually not that bad. Just keep taking the steps. So, what does future you tell you to do? The second is to get into a community of people who are doing it differently. We are designed to be connected as humans. And if the people closest to you are doing the very thing that is making you miserable, whatever that behavior is, whether it's your workplace, whether it's drinking too much, and whether it's being in relationships, being in community with people who are doing things differently opens possibility. We need that community. And that's why you do the programs that you do. Same with me. But for example, as I quit my job and started a solo practice, when now 80% of physicians are employed by large employers, it was very countercultural. So I created a group of 50 women here in Atlanta who are all in solo practice, and we rely on each other in a way that I needed that as I was doing those next hard things. So find your community of people, and you probably need more than one, just like we have mom communities and doctor communities, whatever. Find those influences that are really helpful. And then lastly, it is worth it. And for so many of us who are taught that we are not enough, unless we're 150% of the men in power, we're not enough because we don't deserve it. We have to try harder and to assimilate. What I'll pause with a story and answer your question. When I was 30 and I was drowning in small children and I was totally touched out, and my husband was traveling for a living and I was working so hard. When I look at her now, I'm like, she was killing it. I mean, I can look back on that version of me and be so proud of the hard work of showing up, of trying so hard and desperately to make my life what I wanted, even though in the moment I felt like I was failing every minute of every day. So the you of today, you're going to look back on this moment and be like, God, she was killing it, even if it feels like you're failing right now and you can't change. So, like, believing that you are worth it and taking that next tiny step for you is all that it takes. And then once you get there, take the next tiny step. And before you know it, you're like 10 miles down the road and your life looks really different. You are absolutely worth a life that you do not regret.
Mm, that's beautiful. I love that. Um, Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your words of wisdom. Tell people where they can find you and how they can learn more.
Yeah, my name's Kara with a K, Kara Pepper. So if you can remember my name, you can find me. So Kara Pepper MD on all social media. My website's karapeppermd.com. And if you're curious and want to reach out, it's hello at Kara Pepper MD. So if you're looking to start a solo practice and you want someone to talk to, come find me. I talk about it all the time.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for being on. And all the listeners, go to her website, check her out, send her a DM, and just, give her a follow, and let's support all of these women entrepreneurs who are out there encouraging us and living their own brave life and teaching us the lessons and the values that they have learned as they have gone through their journey. That was awesome. And I'm so glad that we, oh, I don't know if this is working, Lance. You might have to edit this part out at the end. I am so glad that we just had that conversation, and that, this is just real talk about taking risks and making brave moves. They're not always big. They're not always huge. They are in the grand scheme of things. When you can zoom out and you can look down and go, man, I made this decision to give myself 2 hours a day, and that created this thought, and that made me realize this, and that gave me the confidence to do this. Small brave moves are where they are, right? That's where we really live life. We don't live life in the tomorrow I'm going to wake up and quit my job. That's not reality. But we end up on a journey that we crave and that we don't regret by making these small, bold moves. I hope you love today. And listen, if you are interested in coaching, if you're someone who's like, man, is coaching for me? Set up an exploratory call. Have a couple openings right now. I only take about a few clients every month. I'm pretty limited, but I do have a couple openings. Set up an exploratory call, info@becomebraveenough.com. I would love to see if we are a fit and how I can help you. And if not, come to the Brave Enough conference, because we do offer afternoons of free coaching sessions so you can investigate what it is like to be coached by different coaches, and you can find the fit for you. That's at braveenoughconference.com.